On the wedding day, my fiancé, who had been missing for more than half a month, showed up holding the hand of my family's maid's daughter and demanded that I call off the wedding. I found it somewhat amusing and said, "My groom wasn't you to begin with. What wedding are you talking about canceling?" He probably didn't know that he had been swapped at birth and was not the true heir of the Stevens family. My marriage partner had long been changed to Kyle, the true heir of the Stevens family. On my wedding day, the venue was packed with guests, bustling with activity. Suddenly, the church doors were pushed open, and there stood Jeffrey, my missing fiancé from over half a month ago. He walked in holding the hand of my family's maid's daughter, who was also wearing a wedding dress. The scene fell into instant silence as everyone's attention was drawn to them. Jeffrey, with a resolute gaze like a warrior going to battle, loudly addressed the guests, "Everyone, Emily and I are truly in love, so I cannot continue with today's wedding." He then turned his gaze towards me. "Lucy, I'm sorry, but I don't want to marry anyone but Emily. Please call off the engagement and let her take the bride's place." Emily also wore a pitiful expression, as if fighting against a great evil. "Miss Lucy, don't blame Jeffrey. If you want to blame someone, blame me," Jeffrey said solemnly. "There's no right or wrong here, true love is innocent." I interrupted with a hint of amusement, "Is the performance over? My groom wasn't you to begin with. What wedding are you trying to cancel?" Jeffrey was stunned for a moment. "What do you mean by that?" Kyle, with his long legs, stepped forward and coldly stated, "What Lucy means is, this is our wedding. Unimportant people should leave." Who are you?" Jeffrey asked. I linked my arm with Kyle's and said, "He's my groom, the heir of the Stevens family." "You should stop deluding yourself," Emily weakly countered. "What Stevens family heir? I remember there was only Jeffrey in the Stevens family." Jeffrey looked to Kyle's parents for confirmation. "Mom, Dad." Kyle's mother nonchalantly replied, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, you're not my biological child. You were swapped at birth." Kyle's father showed his disdain. "You two, get out quickly and stop making a scene. Don't delay my son's and Lucy's wedding." Indeed, my fiancé was Jeffrey just half a month ago. But then, the Stevens family discovered that he had been swapped at birth, and they had actually been raising someone else's son all these years. At that time, Jeffrey was busy playing around with Emily and had gone missing, making him unreachable. Kyle's parents, already disappointed with him, decided to let this unfilial son fend for himself once they confirmed Jeffrey was not their biological child. Thus, my marriage partner was quietly changed to Kyle, the true heir of the Stevens family. Since Kyle's mother also shares the surname Zhou, Kyle did not change his name. As the daughter of the Jiang family, I had a marriage alliance with the Stevens family, and it was impossible for me to marry Jeffrey, the false heir. We all thought Jeffrey would continue disappearing until the wedding was over. But on the wedding day, he not only showed up but naively thought he was the true heir of the Stevens family and believed he was the groom. He even wanted Emily, dressed in a wedding dress, to replace me in completing the wedding. Such delusions. Jeffrey, unable to believe his ears, turned to look at the promotional posters around the venue. They prominently displayed my and Kyle's wedding photos, perfectly matched, with no sign of him. These two are such weirdos. It's not even their wedding, yet they come here to seek attention. That woman is still in a wedding dress. Does she think she can become a phoenix today? Hilarious. Whispers and snickers filled the audience. Emily, clutching the hem of her wedding dress, had a face as red as liver. Kyle addressed the security below, "Take them away. This was my big day, my stage, and I would not let this outsider ruin it." I continued with my wedding, glowing with joy. As I exchanged rings with Kyle on stage, my eyes inadvertently swept over Jeffrey and Emily whispering to each other from afar. I smiled, feeling immensely grateful that my fiancé had been replaced. Although Kyle and I were at odds in the debate team during college, frankly speaking, Kyle far outshone Jeffrey in terms of physique, temperament, and career. Replacing a useless fiancé who was involved with green tea with a mature, graceful, and handsome man, what's not to like? However, I felt a sense of familiarity in the way Emily looked at Kyle while nestled in Jeffrey's arms. That kind of pitiful look hiding boundless ambition, almost like a tide about to overflow. When Sophia brought her into our home, she behaved timidly, warmly, like a little tail following me, wanting to be my good friend. At that time, I didn't mind having another friend and allowed her to visit me freely. Jeffrey lived next door and would often come to see me. Emily, I don't know how she knew him, would address him as Brother Jeffrey, making Jeffrey ecstatic. She would even take practice questions and, knowing Jeffrey's mediocre grades, would shyly ask, Brother Jeffrey, I don't understand this question. Can you explain it to me? When I was 16, Emily took my room key from Sophia when I wasn't home and snuck into my room to steal clothes. When I caught her returning to fetch something she had forgotten, her tears streamed down like pearls on a broken string. I'm sorry, Miss Lucy. My family has been poor since I was young, and the clothes I wear are all leftovers from my cousins. I've never worn such high-end clothes, so I thought, why cry? Just because you're weak doesn't mean you're right. You think it's okay to steal someone's clothes just because you haven't worn them before? I smelled my clothes. Almost every piece was tainted with cheap perfume, and one even had a large yellow stain. It was unbearable. I'm not one to be merciful. This isn't the first time you've stolen my clothes, is it? Now, you and your mother need to leave my home immediately. And you must compensate for the damage done to the clothes. Jeffrey was immediately triggered by what she said and rushed to block Emily. Lucy, there's no need to be so aggressive. She's already scared and crying. I found it utterly ridiculous. Crying doesn't make her right. Just because she cries doesn't mean she can wear my clothes and make them so dirty. It's all my fault. I was too self-righteous, thinking Lucy would treat me as a good sister. Emily sobbed. Don't be afraid, Jeffrey said to her, then frowned at me. You, as a young lady, are really out of touch. Not everyone is born into luxury. Emily is already so pitiful. What's wrong with her wearing one of your clothes? The disgust and confusion in his eyes at that time still linger in my memory. I felt like I was the arrogant, scheming villain in their story. Ugh. Sophia cried and pleaded, slapped Emily twice, and only then did my mother, considering the past, not pursue the financial loss but made it a smaller issue. When Kyle's mother learned about this, she was also disdainful of Emily's behavior and advised Jeffrey to stay away from her. But I kept seeing them together at school multiple times. Before that, I had seen Jeffrey as a childhood friend and even had a crush on him. After that, I wished I could distance myself from him as much as possible. Even if Jeffrey agreed to a marriage alliance with me in the future, I would still escape on the wedding day. But fortunately, I didn't need to run away, thanks to Emily's impressive ability to handle this useless heir so effectively. After the wedding, as the guests dispersed, Kyle reached out to me with his long, slender fingers adorned with a sparkling ring. Let's go, my dear. I took his hand. Back when we were in different university debate teams, I had faced him several times and lost on a few occasions. I used to hate him so much that I dreamed of debating with him. Now, it's surreal that I'm marrying him. My future in-laws stood behind us, smiling warmly. Mom, you wait a moment. I need to discuss something about my marriage with Emily. Jeffrey came running after us. It was as if Kyle's mother had just remembered him. Oh, you two, if you want to be together, go ahead, no one will stop you, Kyle's mother shrugged. Thank you, Auntie, for your understanding, Emily said, deeply moved, with tears welling up in her eyes. Jeffrey also breathed a sigh of relief. No need to call me Auntie anymore. You'll be my daughter-in-law soon, so you should address me differently, Emily. Emily was about to speak when Kyle's mother cut her off with a smile. Jeffrey isn't my biological child, so whatever you two decide to do is none of my business. You don't need to call me Mom. Then, Kyle's mother turned to me, smiling, and Lucy is my only daughter-in-law. Please don't get any false relatives involved. Emily's face went through various shades of distress. Jeffrey pulled Emily behind him, glaring at Kyle with resentment. Since you've found your real son, you should tell me where my biological parents are. Kyle replied, they'll come to pick you up soon. Emily and Jeffrey's eyes lit up with hope. Indeed, Kyle, with his sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, is the most fitting man for a suit that my family has ever seen. Such an appearance suggests an exceptionally affluent background. Emily tugged at Jeffrey, her face gleaming with unspoken joy. It's okay, Jeffrey, I'll wait with you no matter how long it takes. Your family will come soon. Hilarious. She probably assumed Jeffrey's biological parents were extremely wealthy, and she was thrilled. Kyle asked me, Dear, do you want to continue watching the show, or should we go home? Let's head home. This kind of thing gets boring after a while. Kyle's father said to Jeffrey, Go with your biological parents. We've packed your things from our house. I'll arrange for them to be sent to you soon. That's it. His biological mother was still talking to Emily. "When are you two getting your marriage certificate?" "I'll arrange for the wedding and reception when I get back." "We don't know yet," Emily said, slightly frowning. "By the way, Auntie, where is your home?" "Of course, it's our rural hometown," the mother replied. "Rural?" Emily's voice faltered. "When Kyle and I got home, I was so pleased by the earlier events that I hummed a little tune as I entered the room." The French-style room was decorated more festively than usual. The door slammed shut behind us. Kyle was taking off his suit jacket, his broad back visible under his white shirt. "Are you tired?" "Not really, just excited," I replied. He suddenly chuckled, loosening his tie. "Is that so? I'm excited too." His demeanor seemed oddly mesmerizing, and I swallowed hard. Why did I feel like we were excited about different things? Being inexperienced with marriage, I was frantically considering what to do, wondering if I should bring up our university days. Just then, I felt a tightening around my waist as Kyle embraced me from behind. "Lucy, you've spent too much time on inconsequential people and matters today. It's my turn now," he said, his breath brushing against me, making my heartbeat quicken. As I turned to speak, he sealed my lips with a kiss. The kiss deepened gradually, and after a while, he asked, "Shall we go take a shower?" "Sure." I pretended to be calm as I went to the closet for pajamas, only to find Kyle standing in the bathroom. A bit overwhelming. "You go first." Before I could turn around, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me over, and with the sound of the bathroom door closing, another kiss landed on me. He looked at me with a gaze full of intensity. "Lucy, we're married now." I still remembered his articulate debates from when he was on the opposing team in college, his sharp arguments, and his aloof demeanor. Had he been pretending all along, or had he truly changed? The answer came in the form of a long night. The next morning, as Kyle was getting ready for work, I was still asleep, having only hit the pillow late at night. I was so tired I could barely open my eyes. "Wife, I'm going to work now." I mumbled an and vaguely felt a kiss on my forehead. When I woke up around noon, I was surprised to see a news report on TV about Jeffrey's reunion with his biological family. Jeffrey had a glum expression throughout. Yet, the reporter commented, "We can see from Kyle's father's expression that he is very moved by this reunion." It was hilarious. Jeffrey, dressed in designer clothes, was starkly contrasted with the modest rural setting of his biological parents' home. The house was a self-built 3-story in a rural area, with low buildings surrounding it and a dozen chickens by the fence. The young master, who had never been to such a place before, looked awkwardly out of place. He frowned and told the camera, "Stop filming." His biological father said, "You silly child, interviews bring in money." The camera then panned to Emily, whose smile was more painful than her tears. Meanwhile, Jeffrey's biological mother was still holding her hand and saying, "This is my son's girlfriend, and she's so beautiful. She doesn't mind that we don't have a house or a car. What a good kid." However, Jeffrey said, "Emily doesn't care about those things, but I have a house, a car, and savings. I won't let her suffer in any way." Emily's expression improved at that point. "What I like is him as a person. His family background has nothing to do with me." At that moment, the program's narrator said Jeffrey was young and successful, and described Emily as a rare girl who is not materialistic these days. Both my mother-in-law and I found this quite amusing. Jeffrey's cars, houses, and credit cards all belonged to the Stevens family. He still thought of himself as a young master, but my in-laws had taken back the house, the cars, the bank cards, and the subsidiary company they had entrusted to him. The only thing left was a Lamborghini he was still driving. My mother-in-law smiled with relief. "Fortunately, he's not my biological child, otherwise, I would have kicked him out. After all these years, investing so much time and money in him, he's turned out so useless." After marrying Kyle, the Stevens family gifted us a large, peaceful villa in the city center, in a very prime location. When we arrived at the villa, we saw two people standing at the entrance, none other than the great romantic Jeffrey and his little girlfriend. I got out of the car and walked over with Kyle. "What are you two doing at my house?" Emily hid timidly behind Jeffrey, looking as if she had been scolded. It was clear Jeffrey's protective instincts had flared up. "What do you mean, my house? This villa was given to me by my mom before, so I should be asking what you're doing here." At that moment, the villa's butler came over upon seeing Kyle and me, and greeted us, "Young master, madam, you've arrived." Before I could take a step, Jeffrey tried to walk in with Emily, but the butler stopped him. "Sir, please do not intrude on others' property." "Damon, what's wrong with you? This house is mine. Didn't I come here a few days ago? If you keep this up, do you believe I'll fire you? This house no longer concerns you. The locks have been changed, and if you force your way in, it will be considered trespassing." "You have no right to fire him," Kyle said calmly, turning to Damon. "You did well. I'll have someone increase your salary later." Jeffrey, who had enjoyed a smooth life as a young master for over 20 years, was caught off guard by this unexpected challenge, feeling somewhat dazed. Emily, looking pitifully at Kyle, said softly, "Miss Lucy, Mr. Kyle, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to disturb you, it's just," Kyle interrupted her, "if you're really sorry, then why don't you leave quickly? There was no need for me to intervene." I smiled slightly, linked my arm with Kyle's, and walked into the front yard of the villa. Jeffrey and Emily could only watch us enter, trapped outside the iron gate. There was a swing in the yard, and the sunny weather made it a perfect day for swinging. Soon, my in-laws arrived. We had planned to have dinner in the new house. Jeffrey, looking as if he saw a lifeline, greeted us with a smile. "Mom and Dad, you're here. This house was bought for my wedding," he said, pointing to me swinging on the swing and eating fruit in the yard, "and now they won't let me in and even changed the locks." "Why would we let you in?" Kyle's father frowned. "This house was originally prepared for my beloved son. Now that you're no longer my son, do you still want to stay here?" Jeffrey was clearly disheartened. Emily then spoke up. "Uncle and Auntie, how can you be like this? He's been with you for over 20 years, and you've invested so much effort in him. Even if there's no blood relation, there are feelings involved." Kyle's father responded, "Yes, we spent so much effort training him, but the subsidiary company was a mess under his management. He wasted money extravagantly and disappeared often. In hindsight, the time and money spent were a waste." Jeffrey lowered his head in shame, unable to make a sound. He wasn't always this useless, he was just a bit foolish. It was only later, when filling out university preferences, that despite his family advising him to apply to local universities, he appeared to agree but ended up receiving an acceptance letter from a far-off place, the same city where Emily's college was located. Once free from Kyle's parents' constraints, he indulged in pleasure and ended up performing poorly in his studies, becoming completely useless. But Kyle's parents, considering he was still their son, had him manage a subsidiary company after graduation, with capable subordinates assisting him. However, he proved to be unreliable, frequently disappearing and taking Emily on spontaneous trips. Believing their family's wealth would always support him, Kyle's mother looked at Emily and smiled. "You two are true love, right?" Emily quickly nodded, "Yes. If it's true love, then you must overcome many difficulties. This small test is nothing. What matters is being together," Kyle's mother continued, turning to Jeffrey. "Besides, your girlfriend isn't materialistic, so you don't have to worry about not having a house, a car, or money." Afterward, Kyle's mother walked over to me with a smile. "Lucy, I saw these 2 bags while shopping earlier and thought they'd be perfect for you. See if you like them." "Thank you, Mom." I accepted them without hesitation. Emily stood at the door, glaring at me with a look that could burn a hole through me. I suddenly recalled a high school physical education class where Emily and I were in the same class. As I was about to overtake her, she suddenly fell in front of me, scraping a large patch of skin off her knee, but she told Jeffrey, "Lucy didn't intentionally trip me." "It's okay, Jeffrey. Only someone as foolish as Jeffrey would be deceived by her little tricks," and he told me, "Lucy, I really don't want to argue with you. Just apologize to her and let it go." I couldn't be bothered to explain and walked slowly to her. She thought I was going to apologize. With her head lowered and her lips barely able to hold back a smile, she said, "Actually, it's not necessary." But I gave her a clean slap across the face, causing laughter from the surrounding crowd. I said, "Is this slap enough for an apology?" The force of the slap left her stunned. After a few seconds, she shot me a venomous look but couldn't act out due to Jeffrey being present. "Lucy, you're really going too far." That slap was like shattering Jeffrey's heart into pieces. "Lucy, you're simply unreasonable. This is bullying." Afterward, as she wished, Jeffrey never spoke to me again and never visited my home. I was more than happy about that. Thinking about how Kyle stood up to that scheming woman today made me incredibly happy. Finally, I married a perceptive man who wouldn't be fooled by such lowly tricks. So, after dinner and sending my in-laws off, I took the initiative to hug Kyle's waist. He raised an eyebrow slightly. "What's up?" "Just a reward," I said, and as he looked down at me, I kissed him. His gaze paused for a second, then he held the back of my head and deepened the kiss with his eyes closed. Around 11 o'clock, my phone on the bedside suddenly rang. I squinted to check. It was an unknown number, and before I could answer, the call was ended. Kyle, wearing silver-rimmed glasses and reading beside me, had a handsome profile, and his long eyelashes were like raven feathers. I had to admit, his energy level was a bit excessive. "Who's calling?" "I don't know, someone I don't recognize." After a while, feeling my gaze on him, he looked at me and asked, "Why are you staring at me? Your energy is really impressive." "Is that all you think?" He smirked slightly, and I sensed a hint of sarcasm. "If it weren't for seeing you tired." I covered his restless mouth, and he gently kissed the back of my hand. "You never held back during our debates. Did you ever think I might be your future wife?" He looked at me, his eyes dark and mysterious. "If I lost to you, would you still have such a deep impression of me?" Of course, I even specifically asked about him. His charming eyes curved into a smile, and he teased, "Specifically asked about me?" I mumbled, "Yeah, you're the top student in the university we both attended. It would be hard not to hear about a person like you." He was known for being aloof and arrogant, always either on the path to making money or on the path to making money, and to top it off, he was the #1 student in his entire department, even working with classmates to develop software and start a company. "So why were you so driven back then?" He paused for a moment before asking, "Do you want to know?" "Yes." He hesitated, as if deciding whether to share. I sat up, wrapped my arms around him, and leaned against his chest. "Why not tell your wife?" Kyle said, "Talking about it feels like complaining." Over the years, Kyle's adoptive parents had largely left him to fend for himself. During middle school, he was sent to live with distant relatives who ran a small restaurant, working in exchange for meals and tuition. In high school and college, he had to earn his own living expenses, and his adoptive parents frequently asked him for money to cover household expenses. He used to think his adoptive parents were poor and didn't know how to express their love, which was why they neglected him so thoroughly. That was until their second son was born. Seeing how they doted on their new child, he realized that lack of love is just lack of love, and there were no real excuses. After understanding this, he rarely went home because no one there welcomed him. Although his adoptive parents continued to ask him for money, Kyle covered 90% of the cost for their family's land and house. No wonder he worked so hard back then. Hearing this made me angry. "Your adoptive parents are really inhumane. I seriously suspect they knew you weren't their biological child. Otherwise, how could they be so heartless, without anyone caring about you?" "It's okay, you have a wife now. I'll take good care of you," I said half jokingly, half seriously, and patted his head. He suddenly hugged me, buried his head in my neck, and let out a long sigh. "You said it, Lucy." On the other side, Jeffrey and Emily were wandering aimlessly down the street. "Let's go eat." He had gotten used to spending lavishly, but now all he had left was a few thousand in WeChat. The cards he used to swipe freely had all been cancelled, so he reluctantly decided to go to a small roadside restaurant. Emily frowned. "I don't want to eat this." "Then what do you want to eat?" "The seafood place you said you would take me to last time." He would have taken her without hesitation before, but now he didn't have the means. Thinking about returning to that cramped space, so different from where he used to live, made him feel suffocated. "I don't have much money right now. I'll take you another day." Emily was silent for a while, then suddenly answered a phone call. Emily said, "My mom just called and asked me to go home for dinner, so I won't be staying with you. Do you want me to give you a ride? Your car has been taken away. What will you use to take me?" I can call a taxi for you." He thought he might be mistaken, but Emily's tone seemed a bit harsh, which made him inexplicably anxious. He hugged Emily. "Emily, now I only have you. You won't leave me, right? Let's get married once I move my household registration back in a few days, okay?" Emily didn't immediately hug him back. After a long pause, she said, "Jeffrey, I actually want to ask if you are in a position to get married now." Jeffrey replied, "I'm 25 now. I can get married. I'm not talking about age." I'm asking if you have a house or a car. Do you even have the basic amount of money for a wedding? Emily, I thought you weren't a materialistic girl, Jeffrey said, feeling a strange sense of unfamiliarity with Emily, who had been pestering him about when he would marry her just a few days ago. Sorry, Jeffrey. I just feel that with how hard things are for you right now, marrying you would only add to your burdens. I don't want to drag you down. I'll leave now. It turned out she was speaking out of consideration for him. If it were someone like Lucy, she would have probably scolded him severely. Thinking of this, he called a close friend to borrow some money. But either they were too busy with their own matters or didn't even answer the phone, even though they had once eagerly invited him to hang out. He felt dejected on the street. He didn't want to go back to his real home, but he also couldn't bring himself to spend money on a hotel. In the end, he took a long, bumpy bus ride, resigned to returning home. When he got off, he almost threw up, but as soon as he walked into the house, his biological parents' first words were, "You're back. The fridge at home has been used for 10 years. We're thinking of replacing it. What do you think? Just buy it if you want it." "Why are you asking me?" "But this fridge is a bit expensive. We're short about 2,000. Can you?" "What kind of people are they?" He had only been back a short while and they were already asking for money. "I don't have any money either." Jeffrey didn't give them a pleasant look, gave them 500, and then went straight to his room. The bed was uncomfortable, and no matter how he lay, he couldn't get comfortable, tossing and turning all night. He spent a few days and a days at home, surviving on takeout and short videos. In no time, his remaining balance had dropped from 4 figures to 3. Opening WeChat, there were no new messages, and Emily hadn't contacted him. He took the initiative to call her. "Why haven't you been reaching out to me lately?" She replied, "Jeffrey, we should take a break from seeing each other for now. My mom doesn't want me to see you anymore." "Why?" Jeffrey was stunned. "My mom said, if you want to marry me, even without talking about the wedding banquet and the car, you can't even come up with the 88,000 in bride price. She now wants me to break up with you." The last time he visited Emily's home, Sophia had warmly praised him, saying her daughter was lucky to have found someone like him. "I will find a way to get the bride price, Emily. Please wait for me. I won't let you." "I know. My mom is here now. I have to go." The call ended, and Jeffrey was frantically scratching his head. But now, at the end of his rope, thinking about working gave him a headache. He had been sending out resumes online, but most were read without reply. And honestly, he didn't even look at the salaries offered. He used to spend much more on a single meal than what those jobs paid. "I thought the situation was over. But it wasn't." I received a call from an unknown number, and to my surprise, it was Jeffrey's voice. "Lucy, sorry for calling you so late." His tone was surprisingly gentle. "Is there something you need?" "Not a big deal, but, could you lend me some money?" "Huh," I replied, "are we close enough for me to lend you money? You have hands and feet, and you went to university. Isn't it just a matter of finding a decent job to earn money?" "Finding a job takes time too. Considering we grew up together, can you lend me some money to get by for now? I'm really at my wit's end, and everything costs money, as you know." "Sorry, I don't know. Didn't you say I'm out of touch with reality? Did you forget?" He paused for half a second. "And now, how do you find this reality?" "Lucy, how can you be like this?" "Well, it's been so many years, and you're still holding it against me." Jeffrey was high and mighty one moment and then pitiful the next. "Miss Lucy, can I beg you? I'm really. Don't pull that kind of emotional card on me. Figure it out yourself. You're an adult now," I said, and then hung up the phone. Who's going to play the emotional card with him? When he was attacking me without reason for Emily's sake, why didn't he mention our shared past? Now he's trying this tactic? Who's buying it? But he was really persistent and called back again. I ended up blocking his number. So annoying. In the afternoon, after shopping with my friends, I passed by Kyle's company on the way. I had the driver take me there to pick him up after work. But I saw Emily standing at the entrance of the building, holding something and apparently waiting for someone. I sat in the car, quietly observing what she was up to. Soon, Kyle came out, accompanied by his assistant. Emily quickly adjusted her hair and her expression, walking up to him. "Mr. Kyle, may I have a minute of your time?" She pulled out a pink bento box from her handbag. "This is homemade. I hope you can forgive me and Jeffrey for our previous recklessness." There's no other intention behind it. At that time, many employees were coming out for lunch, and Emily's actions drew quite a bit of attention. After all, delivering lunch like this is something only someone with a close relationship would do. Kyle didn't even glance at her and said, "No need." His assistant stepped in. "Miss, please conduct yourself properly. Our president is about to have a meal with his wife. Please avoid any actions that might be misinterpreted." People around began to whisper. "Why are you making me look like that? I didn't mean anything like that." Emily's experience was that playing the pity card would always win sympathy, and that even if she was unreasonable, people would give her face in public. But this tactic didn't work with Kyle at all. I slowly got out of the car and said intentionally, "Honey." All eyes turned toward us. "That's the president's wife. She's so beautiful. Perfect match, who understands?" Kyle naturally reached out to me, his previously cold expression now softened with a smile, completely different from his earlier poker face. Seeing this, Emily fled in a panic. But perhaps in her haste, she didn't watch where she was going and bumped into a delivery guy speeding by. She was fine, but the bag with her bento box hit the ground, spilling its contents. The sound of the box hitting the pavement was loud. Out of it fell 2 large heart-shaped slices of bacon and a card with her contact information. It was obvious to everyone what her intentions were. Some bystanders laughed out loud. "Help, heart-shaped bacon?" I don't know what gave her the courage. Emily, furious, turned her anger on the delivery guy. "How are you riding your bike? I was going straight and you suddenly jumped out. What does that have to do with me?" I linked my arm with Kyle's and walked away. I was already tired of this act, but she still hadn't improved and was using the same old tactics. I was really about to burst out laughing. In the afternoon, I went to get a new hairstyle and then visited my mother-in-law. We lived very close, just a few minutes drive away. In just a few days, she had bought me a bunch of things. "I saw this dress while shopping and thought it would suit your temperament, so I bought it for you. And these 2 bags match the dress we bought together last time. Do you like them?" "I love them, thank you, Mom. My mother-in-law and I have similar tastes, and I really liked what she picked out." Suddenly, there was a commotion outside. "It's right here." It was Jeffrey's adoptive parents and Jeffrey. I frowned. Jeffrey's biological father said sternly, "Kyle's father, Kyle's mother, we need to discuss something with you." My mother-in-law asked, "What is there to discuss between us?" Out of courtesy, she invited them into the living room and had them sit down. Jeffrey's biological mother spoke up. "As you know, Jeffrey is about to get married. We need to discuss his wedding arrangements." "What does his wedding have to do with my mother-in-law?" I asked. But my mother-in-law patted my hand gently and gave me a warm look before saying to them, "Please continue. But you know our situation. We only have one self-built house and can't provide a dowry. We can't prepare a house or a car due to financial reasons, so we hope you will cover these expenses. After all, Jeffrey has called you parents for over 20 years. You have a large family and considerable wealth, so contributing this small amount shouldn't be a big deal for you." She spoke as if it were a matter of course. My mother-in-law asked, "Anything else?" "Also, you don't need to worry about the details. Just contribute 4 to 5 million or more if possible, and we will handle the rest." I really couldn't believe there were such shameless people in the world. Jeffrey kept his head down throughout, clearly agreeing with his parents' demands. My father-in-law, who had been in the business world for many years, immediately sneered. "Why should we pay for your son's wedding? And you're asking for millions right off the bat. What do you think this is? I read in the newspaper that your company makes billions in extra revenue every year. This amount shouldn't be difficult for you, right?" Jeffrey's biological father said. "Besides, you've raised him all these years. Shouldn't you be willing to do this for him?" After a long silence, Jeffrey finally said, "Just this once. We won't bother you again in the future." My father-in-law glanced at him and said, "You know we've raised him all these years and never asked him to repay the money he's wasted on him. We've been very generous. Please leave, we can't afford to waste any more money. We've invested a lot in Kyle's upbringing. His success now is because we put in a lot of effort." "What effort have you put in?" I couldn't help but interrupt. "Let me ask you, what effort have you made?" "Your so-called effort was to send him off to work as a laborer, forcing him to earn his own tuition. You never covered his college expenses and even started asking him for money. What exactly did you contribute? How can you have the face to say such things?" Jeffrey's mother stammered, "You little girl, why is your mouth so sharp? We did this for his own good, to train him and his independence." I smiled and continued, "Oh really? Then why not send your own son to train instead of coming here asking for money? He should be starting to train now after all these years of idleness." They were left speechless. My mother-in-law said, "You may not know this, but I've already reported this to the police." They stood up abruptly, flustered. "Why are you reporting to the police just for asking for money? If you insist on sticking around for money, we will naturally file a lawsuit for extortion. As for the police report, you should be aware of the reasons. We don't know anything about that, we haven't done anything illegal." She shook her head vigorously, but it only made her seem more guilty. "We don't want your money." Jeffrey, curious, asked, "Report to the police? What's going on?" Jeffrey's mother turned pale. "Yes, we just came to ask for money. Since you're being so heartless, we won't bother you anymore. Why accuse us?" At that moment, the police arrived. My in-laws had already reported the case of the baby swap a long time ago. The police had just confirmed that the swap was indeed orchestrated by Jeffrey's biological mother. The nurse at the hospital, a relative of Jeffrey's mother, had swapped Kyle and Jeffrey. This act was not only unethical but also illegal. The nurse had been found by the police and had confessed to her crime. Jeffrey's mother was caught off guard, and their attempt to extort money ended up backfiring. The police took them away, and peace was restored to our home. Thinking about what they had done to Kyle over the years made me so angry that when Kyle came home for dinner, I kept serving him food. My father-in-law and mother-in-law were all smiles. As for Emily, I didn't know her situation because my time was too precious to waste on her. Later, I saw news about her on social media. Emily was the main character. She was having a candlelit dinner with a middle-aged man at a Western restaurant when the original partner arrived and overturned the table. The woman loudly accused Emily of being a mistress and poured wine on her. This dramatic scene was captured by someone dining in the restaurant and was posted online, causing a stir. Jeffrey, upon learning of this, had a big fight with her. They openly argued on the street, exposing each other's shortcomings, and passers-by posted it online. Netizens even dug up Jeffrey's old video where he claimed his parentage, creating a viral video with dramatic twists. In the video, Emily, who had previously claimed to be interested in Jeffrey himself, was shown saying that his background and family were irrelevant to her. In the next moment, she was criticizing Jeffrey for being an unemployed rural person and implying that she only approached him because he was a wealthy heir. Jeffrey was seen in one clip promising to give Emily a grand wedding, while in another, he was accusing her of wasting his money and demanding she repay him. Netizens summarized it in one sentence: one is foolish, the other is despicable. Just lock them up. It was clear that Jeffrey was reaping what he sowed, and Emily's time to be exposed was not yet over. These gossip tidbits were sent to me by friends. I was busy enjoying my honeymoon with Kyle. Their issues were just entertainment, and what mattered most was living our life well. We walked hand in hand along the beach at night. We visited beautiful places, took photos, and enjoyed the feeling of marrying first and falling in love later. It was actually quite nice. Suddenly, it started to rain on the beach. The rain was light, so we decided to stroll slowly in it. But as the rain grew heavier, we went back to the hotel. As soon as we entered the room, Kyle pulled me into the bathroom, where we showered for a long time. I suddenly remembered a time in college when I went to visit a friend at a nearby university and passed by a basketball court. It was raining then, but there were still several guys playing basketball. I accidentally spotted Kyle. His white t-shirt was soaked through and almost transparent, revealing the contours of his broad shoulders and abdominal muscles. I felt compelled to stop and watch. When the rain stopped, the guys all took off their shirts. Kyle also removed his t-shirt, revealing his lean upper body. He wrung out the rainwater and quickly put it back on. When he turned around, our eyes met. His youthful eyes were clear and calm, but his normally indifferent expression froze for a moment when he saw me, and his ears turned bright red. He awkwardly looked away. "Kyle, nice body," I teased him. He walked away without looking back. "Come here, let me dry your hair." I snapped out of my distant memories and walked obediently to his side, enjoying his service. I had asked him to dry my hair a few times before, and he had become increasingly skilled at it. After drying my hair, he put down the hairdryer, pulled me onto the bed, and leaned down to kiss me. I wrapped my arms loosely around his neck, enjoying the warmth he radiated. Can I ask you something? Did you have a crush on me in college? You blushed when you saw me, Kyle asked with a smirk. I described the situation to him, and he quickly remembered it. He laughed, his eyes softening with a gentle light. Shouldn't I be asking you? If you remembered me just from me taking off my shirt, didn't you have a crush on me? Absolutely not. His kiss lingered on my earlobe, still denying it? I surrendered reluctantly. All right, I did have a crush on you. As I began to drift off in the early hours of the morning, I vaguely heard him whisper in my ear, I do like you, but I never thought I'd have you. But now I have you, my dear. His long-standing indifference had made him don sharp armor and wear a mask of coldness. He met the girl who made his heart flutter at first sight, but he was aware of their vast differences. He had a promising youth but lacked money, needing to earn more. With empty sleeves, how could he afford to mislead a beautiful girl? He liked her but never imagined he could have her. Yet he harbored some selfish desires, wanting her to remember his name and leave a slightly stronger impression in her memory. So he signed up for a debate competition that wouldn't earn him money and was of little interest to him, but it was a way to stay in her thoughts. Now, she was by his side. She was his wife. He loved her deeply.